Cambodia has long depended on Vietnam's rivers to reach global markets, but now it wants to make its own path. The government has started building a canal that will connect the country's busy central areas to its southwestern coast. It has since become a source of national pride for Cambodians. Stretching 180 kilometers from start to finish, the canal is a major focus for Hun Manet, who recently took over as Cambodia's leader after his father. He needs a big, impactful change to create his own legacy, and this canal might just be it. But this project isn't just for show. Like the Panama Canal, Cambodia's new shortcut could change trade routes and shift regional power. The canal, called Phunan Techo, is designed to bypass the Vietnamese-controlled Mekong Delta, where most trade in the area passes through. This would give Cambodia more control over its own exports, and exports it has. Cambodia is rich in all sorts of natural resources, and with China underwriting the construction expenses, Vietnam and America suspect there are hidden motives at play. They might be onto something. Recent satellite images show Chinese Navy ships docked at Ream Naval Base, which is very close to the new canal's exit point. This in turn has raised suspicions of a secret deal between China and Cambodia to establish a permanent Chinese military presence there. The Pentagon is now watching the canal closely. It has its naval bases, air bases, and important strategic locations nearby. Meanwhile, billions of dollars in trade pass through the nearby waters, with China claiming much of the area around it through its 9-dash line. It's almost as if the world map is static until you realize it's just a snapshot of a fight in progress. Working on this topic, as with many of our videos, is difficult because most sources are not accessible from my location. Every single time we work on a China-related topic, we run into issues. China's national firewall bars information from coming in and out, so I have to pretend to be elsewhere, and I do that with today's sponsor NordVPN. Using the app, I can place myself virtually anywhere in the world, which opens endless sources of content. But it's more than just that. NordVPN is in the business of protecting you online. Most people use VPNs when they are abroad and want to connect to the internet from their own country so they don't get kicked out of sensitive apps like Gmail or their social media accounts. Sometimes I connect via the United States just to get access to American content in my streaming services that isn't available here. If you want to give this a go, click the link in my description. It's nordvpn.com/CaspianReport. There is a 30-day money-back guarantee. You can try it out for up to 30 days and get all your money back if it's something you don't think is very useful to you. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets you in on an extra extended subscription to NordVPN. You get the 2-year plan plus 4 extra months. It's a good deal, and again, it helps support the channel when you sign up. Thank you NordVPN for sponsoring today's video and supporting our content. Sometimes the meaning of a word can make all the difference. Phunan Techo, the name of the canal, carries deep symbolism. Phunan is the ancient Chinese name for Cambodia, dating back to the 3rd century. So the canal's name is literally a tribute to China's influence and history. Names matter. They signal intent, especially in this region. Costing $1.7 billion, the Phunan Techo Canal represents China's footprint in Southeast Asia. It spans 180 kilometers from Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh, down to the city of Kep by the Gulf of Thailand. This route is worth a closer look. Starting at Phnom Penh's port, the canal stretches 20 kilometers southwest through grasslands before joining the Basak River, which flows another 30 kilometers south. Near a place called Kayo Thum, the canal curves west for 130 kilometers, ending at the Kep Salt Flats and flowing out into the sea. Along the way, the canal will have supporting infrastructure, including 3 waterway dams, 11 bridges, and over 200 kilometers of sidewalks and roads, all set to be completed by 2028. The canal's route was planned specifically to pass through as many inland areas as possible, connecting them with the isolated southern coast. This connection is really important because the new government wants to make Cambodia one of the world's top 10 agricultural producers by 2030. However, Cambodia has only 2,400 kilometers of paved roads, which isn't enough to support land-based trade. Because of this, the country relies on river trade along the Mekong River, a practice that goes back to its early history. For context, the Mekong is a major river, Asia's third longest in fact. Starting in the Tibetan Plateau, it winds through 6 countries before reaching the South China Sea. The river is essential for the landlocked countries it passes through, and while in most international rivers, the upstream nations hold leverage, with the Mekong, it's downstream Vietnam that has the power. Exports and imports depend on the Vietnamese-controlled Mekong Delta, which gives Hanoi a lot of bargaining power in the region. This setup leaves upstream countries like Cambodia heavily dependent on Vietnam's cooperation. Cambodian leaders now want to change this relationship, and the Funan Techo Canal is central to that goal. It could cut trade through Vietnam by up to 90%. Not surprisingly, lawmakers call the canal a straw to breathe through. Plans submitted to the Mekong River Commission show that the Funan Techo Canal will be 100 meters wide and 5.4 meters deep. During peak seasons, it will handle ships up to 3,000 tons, which is about 150 large containers per vessel. This capacity is similar to the Mississippi and Danube rivers. So, as far as artificial canals go, this is quite impressive. Yet, as Cambodia breaks ground on the project, it stirs up more than just soil. The country is rich in natural resources, with French and Chinese surveys showing large amounts of iron, copper, gold, lead, aluminum, bauxite, manganese, phosphate, and more in the southern half. River trade would open up this economic potential, create a direct route to international markets, and boost revenues by avoiding Vietnam's export terms. As a major player in minerals, China is highly invested in this project. It dominates in extracting, refining, and processing mineral resources and aims to secure that dominance by tapping into potential sources worldwide. It's no surprise then that the Funan Techo Canal is funded by the China Road and Bridge Corporation, a state-owned company. But this could be just the beginning. China's state-owned companies lead development throughout Southeast Asia. An extensive 2022 study by the China in the World Network found Cambodia to be the second most influenced country by China, right after Pakistan. The most affected areas were law enforcement, the military, and foreign policy. Once the canal is complete, Cambodia could be placed at the top. Wealth isn't the only thing attracting Chinese power to Cambodia. The Funan Techo Canal is part of the Belt and Road Initiative and fits into China's String of Pearls strategy, which is a network of Chinese-funded ports and bases aimed at extending influence across Asia-Pacific. This network includes key projects like Kiauk Phu Port in Myanmar, Hambantota Port in Sri Lanka, Gwadar Port in Pakistan, Khalifa Port in the UAE, Lamu Port in Kenya, and the PLA support base in Djibouti. Each of these locations is strategically placed along important shipping routes, giving Beijing the leverage it needs to counterbalance America's long-established alliances in the region. So, from China's perspective, Cambodia's canal is both a commercial asset and a military advantage. While the Funan Tesho's depth of 5.4 meters limits its military use to smaller coastal fleets, its closeness to the expanding deep-water port at Ream has raised eyebrows. Officially, Ream Naval Base belongs to Cambodia's armed forces, but since 2022, China-funded reconstruction has transformed it, and it's now believed to host Chinese assets exclusively. Satellite images reveal Chinese Navy frigates dock there year-round, while port calls from Japan and other nations have been declined. US defense officials argue that the canal leading to Ream Naval Base could serve as a support line in the event of broader hostilities. China claims much of the South China Sea through its disputed 9-dash line. This U-shaped boundary cuts into areas claimed by neighboring countries, with the most contested regions including the Paracel Islands, the Spratly Islands, and the Scarborough Shoal. China already has bases on Mischief Reef, Woody Island, Fiery Cross Reef, and Subi Reef, but a base at Ream near the Gulf of Thailand would allow it to monitor naval activity nearby and provide the Chinese Navy with a forward position to secure the southern edge of its 9-dash line. Vietnam is especially uneasy as its coastline is now encircled from the east and southwest. Like the Philippines, Vietnam disputes China's claims to islands in the South China Sea and has clashed with Chinese forces in the past. For Cambodians, meanwhile, these grand strategies are irrelevant. What is relevant is that China is the only country investing billions in Cambodia. Besides the canal, Chinese companies are building highways, industrial zones, and airports. The Siem Reap Angkor International Airport, for instance, opened last year, while the Tesho International Airport is under construction. What's more, since the Free Trade Agreement went into force in January 2022, tariffs have been lifted, and up to 1 million Cambodians have found jobs with Chinese companies. These efforts have greatly boosted Cambodia's GDP. So, for the leadership in Phnom Penh, working with Beijing is a clear win-win. Then again, about 40% of Cambodia's $10 billion national debt is owed to Chinese banks. That's enough to keep Cambodia from opposing China's foreign policy. And frankly, it doesn't have to. Cambodia has no actionable claim in the South China Sea. So, this deal is too good to pass up, even with strings attached. Watching their neighbor's tree grow with a wary eye, Vietnam stands on the opposite side of the spectrum. The two countries have a tense relationship with memories of Vietnam's invasion and occupation of Cambodia in the late 1970s, still shaping policies today. The Funan Techo Canal changes this dynamic though. Once completed, it would allow Cambodia to trade directly with global markets, bypassing the Vietnamese-controlled Mekong Delta. Vietnam, however, views things differently. In past conflicts, it has faced existential strategic threats. The country's geography is divided into two main regions, north and south. These are connected by a coastal stretch that narrows to just about 48 kilometers at its thinnest point. However, this narrow link is difficult to access due to dense and thick vegetation. Because of this, Vietnam has historically pushed westward into Laos and Cambodia to link its two halves. Distasteful but necessary. Without proactive policy making, geography would have trapped the country between the mountains and the sea. It's a dog-eat-dog world. In 1989, Vietnam withdrew from Laos and Cambodia in exchange for access to global markets. But this move left it without strategic depth. Now, the Funan Techo Canal threatens to remove Vietnam's last foothold in both Cambodia and Laos. River trade from Laos will have the option to enter and exit through Cambodia, giving Laos new leverage to renegotiate Vietnam's terms and transit fees. As expected, Hanoi has opposed the canal. Vietnamese policymakers worry that Cambodia might control or change the canal's flow, which could lower Mekong water levels during dry seasons and threaten Vietnam's water supply and food security. That may sound alarmist, but rice from the Mekong Delta makes up 90% of Vietnam's food exports and contributes 17% to the national economy. Climate change has already taken a toll on the Mekong, with water levels dropping in recent years. Projections show that the canal could eventually divert up to 50% of the river's flow. The bottom line is that Vietnam has very little flexibility when it comes to its geography. As China's influence grows in Cambodia, Laos, and the South China Sea, Vietnam feels the noose tightening. This anxiety has pushed its lawmakers to seek closer ties with former adversaries. Strategic talks with the United States have been growing stronger and are expected to intensify during the Trump administration. That's how it is in geopolitics. The best alliances come with a mutual disdain for the alternative. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. If you approve of what we do, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and mayhaps share the video. In any case, thank you for your time, and Sahol.